Hello out there and welcome to another show. I'm Revere. I have a great man here. His name is Eric Lampedecchio.
Perfect.
Thank you, Eric. You are running for councillor in Ward 5.
Yes,
but
sir.
Before we start, could you give us a little briefing about yourself?
Sure. I've grown up in the Riverside section of Ward 5. I'm a product of Revere Public Schools. I graduated from the high school in 2003. I went on to pursue my bachelor's degree in business administration from Salem State in 2008. And I'm currently working towards my master's degree at Southern New Hampshire University online in organizational leadership.
Right now, what made you decide to run for councillor for Ward 5?
To be perfectly honest with you, I wasn't getting the response I was looking for on some issues in my neighborhood. The response that I did get, for example, there was some gang graffiti on my street, and it took about 6 months to get it cleaned up. I'd get out there and paint it myself, but unfortunately I don't have that ability because it wasn't on my property, so I needed the city's assistance to get that cleaned up.
You mean there's some gangs down in your Ward 5 area?
Unfortunately, yes. I'm sorry to report that, but we've had some issues. I'm not sure if you heard recently about the issues on Eastern Avenue.
No.
There was recently a police incident there involving a kidnapping, as well as some drug money and things like that.
That's pretty good. Now, if you were on the council and elected, what would you really change that's there now, if you could change it?
My highest priority would honestly be communication. Too often residents are finding out about issues after they're already in place or about changes after they've already been established. So for example, I know that the residents on Ford Street and Bellevue Avenue have a new development going up in their backyard. There's some townhouses being built back there. And they all came out to the meeting and they were very upset because they had gotten very short notice or no notice at all. There's also some issues going on right now down at the former site of the Cove on Revere Street, where residents received a flyer in the mail the day before regarding a public meeting that was taking place the next day regarding that project. There's also units that are being built on Revere Beach, right on the boulevard. Those 200 wooden units, you may have driven by them. They're kind of across from the marina. I don't ever recall a meeting on those units either. So I'd like to get the residents involved in the community, and I feel that the response I've received from them as I knock door to door, they want to be involved as well.
Right, and talking about residential buildings,
Yes,
you
sir.
know there's the Wonderland dog track, there's Suffolk Downs. What would you do if you could for those two places?
I'm going to address the Wonderland dog track primarily because that is in Ward 5.
Oh, that is in Ward 5?
That is part of Ward 5. Ward 5 is huge. It extends from Point of Pines to Oak Island, all the way down to Harris Street and around the high school area.
Is Kelly's on the beach in Ward 5 also?
It sure is.
Okay.
I've stopped there a few times after walking in the neighborhood, I'm going to be honest. My diet's not serving me well right now.
I love their food, though. I do love their food.
They are the best.
Go ahead.
In regards to Wonderland, I'd like to see a true commercial development there. And by true commercial, I don't mean dollar stores and I don't mean small retail. I mean true office space, kind of like the building we're in now. I want to bring in some big business to the city because it's the big business that pays a higher tax rate. That higher tax rate can help us offset the tax rate residents like you and I pay, and it can help offset that tax burden.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned about the tax rate. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that there's on the election, sometimes in November coming up, that the city wants to reduce 10% of the senior citizens, you know, give them a 10% discount at that.
It's my understanding that there'll be a question on the ballot in regards to giving the senior citizens a 10% tax break. I'm not sure as to where that stands. The mayor's office would probably be able to better handle that question than I.
Right. Okay, so that would be on that will be on the ballot, and we'll have a chance to vote on it. That's very
That's my
good.
understanding right now. Yep.
Okay. Now you worked as a bank, in a bank.
Yes, sir.
We were talking before we went on the air about elder abuse.
Oh, yes.
And we were talking about, then you brought up financial abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us some of the abuses that goes on with the finance? I mean, I never heard of financial abuse.
Yeah, it's extremely unfortunate. It's very difficult to see, especially when you know that residents are on a fixed income. There's an act in place called the Elder Financial Abuse Act, and it's really geared around preventing situations like that. So one situation that I can recall seeing was an issue where there was an elderly woman, and her daughter was unfortunately addicted to drugs. The daughter got a hold of the elderly woman's checkbook and began signing checks to herself, so it ended up being a fraud situation. But by the time we caught on, so much money had already been gone, and the elder woman didn't want to press charges because that's her daughter.
Right.
It's a very difficult situation for our seniors and for all residents.
And I didn't know what the other type, of course, is the physical abuse.
Of course, and
Yeah.
that's far worse than financial, in my opinion. Safety of our seniors is a priority.
Oh, that's sad. But I'd like to go to a good subject. You told me that you work at the TD Bank. I mean at the TD.
The TD Garden.
The TD Gardens, correct.
It's changed names so many times.
I know. When did you first start there, and how do you like it there?
Sure, I love it there. I've been there for about 15 years. It is actually a union job, local UFCW 1445. My friend's mom, when we all turned 16, she said, "You guys all have to get jobs," so she brought us all in. She got us the jobs, and I never left. I'm still there 15 years later.
And have you seen some good games there while you've been there? Basketball, hockey?
I've been lucky enough to be there for the Celtics championship back in 2008 when they won the whole thing.
Yep.
The Bruins in 2011. Unfortunately, they won it on the road for Game 7, but I did see a lot of that series as well.
And you get a chance to meet the players and talk to them too?
I wish I got a better chance to meet them as often, but I've been in the elevator with some interesting people, including Steven Tyler.
So you've had your ups and downs there.
Yeah, it's been a great gig. No complaints. It's been a really great job, and where it's a union job, it does pay well.
Yep. That's Causeway Street that runs by there, isn't it? That runs by the TD?
Yes,
Garden?
sir. Causeway
Okay.
Street, yep.
Very good. Okay, I wanted to talk to you. We did talk about what really major issues do you really see in the ward? And before we get into that, tell us a little about your family. You mentioned your grandfather was in World War II.
Yes, my great-grandfather.
Oh, great-grandfather.
Yeah, Alan Malayson, he was a pilot in World War II. My family has been in Revere since the 90s for the most part. My aunt moved here before us, and then my mom eventually brought me over. We grew up down the Riverside section, and I have a ton of family in the ward, and that's honestly another reason to run. I got a lot of friends and family in the area where I grew up, and although I moved out of the Riverside, I live on Tapley Avenue right off of Broadway, which is still Ward 5. It's that big.
Right. Tell us a little now about some of your hobbies that I'd like to know. Oh, yeah, tell us about your hobbies.
Sure. My favorite hobby is, it's going to sound silly, but playing softball. I like to get out there, and it's a good recreational sport. And
when I was a young kid, don't laugh, overseas, that's exactly what we did.
Oh, yeah?
Play softball,
That's awesome.
just like you.
I was actually digging through some old pictures, and I found some pictures of me from Micmac and Field back when I was a kid playing t-ball.
Wow,
So it was interesting. It goes all the way back to when I was a little boy.
fantastic. So your great-grandfather was in World War II,
Yes, sir.
and he was a pilot. Can I ask you where?
I'm not sure of the exact location.
Oh,
And unfortunately, he's passed. I wouldn't be able to get that info at this time.
okay. What kind of movies do you like, by the way, when you like to watch things?
I like to laugh. I love comedy movies, to be honest with you. It helps unwind after a long day to get a few laughs in, and they're really enjoyable for me.
So I guess you like people like, I don't know if you remember when I was young, like maybe Laurel and Hardy,
Oh, I don't know who those are.
Abbott and Costello.
I know the name, but I don't know the faces.
Okay, tell us who your favorite comics are then.
I like a lot of the early 90s comedians, excuse me. Jim Carrey was always funny,
Yep.
and Chris Farley before he
Yep.
passed. Those were probably the ones that made me laugh the most as a kid.
Or Jerry Lewis when he was,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he just passed away
Unfortunately, yeah.
recently. Yep. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, I want you to tell the people if you can, because we have about 20 minutes left and I got to get that in somehow. Some of the conditions when you work at the bank
Yes.
and people come in, what are some of the problems that they ask you to help them with?
Many issues that we see.
Excuse me, and especially the elderly.
Sure. I do want to just clarify for a moment as well. I work at Metro Credit Union, which is actually a credit union, not a bank.
Oh, okay.
So the big difference is we're a little bit.
What is the difference between a credit union and a bank then?
We're much more people-oriented. We believe in service, and we believe in people helping people, whereas banks have, I would call them stockholders, where they actually own the bank, and the bank's job is to make them a profit. We're a credit union. We're owned by the people that have accounts there.
Now, does the FDIC also take care of the credit union like it does in the bank, or no?
It's actually a different regulatory institution called the NCUA, the National Credit Union Administration.
Oh, okay. Tell us some of the things that go on there.
Sure. Where to begin? I've transitioned out of the branches. I now work in training. So I'm able to get a better handle on, or better prepare our tellers and frontline staff on what they're going to see in the branches. So we meet quite often regarding fraud situations that we see happening all the time.
Okay, tell us some of the frauds so people will see.
I honestly want to say the state of Massachusetts is probably one of the best in protecting our residents. There's one regulation in particular called Regulation E, the Electronic Funds Transfer Act. And that protects you that if someone gets a hold of your debit card and starts spending all of your money out of your account, the bank is obligated to give you that money back if it was not you. So in the case of fraud, the most you can be held liable for is $50. So if somebody grabbed your debit card and ran wild and spent $3,000, the most you would have to pay back is $50. And most institutions don't even charge that.
Is that the same for the banks and the credit unions, or different?
That is financial services as a whole.
Oh.
So that regulation is both.
Right, so it's not good to, by the way, you know, like I'm looking at the computer now, but I mean, you know, people give out their credit card and their social security, which is stupid to put that on the machine here.
It's stupid to you and I. However, some people, unfortunately, they're not as ready or apprehensive as we might be to protect ourselves.
Excuse me, but they also have electronic banking. How do you protect yourself from that, if I may ask you?
The big thing with protecting yourself with electronic banking is to not click links from people that you don't know. So for example, with what hackers will do is they'll get a hold of your email and they'll send you an email that looks like it says, hey, you won the lottery, click here to collect. But when you click there, they get a hold of your password and all your credentials, and the next thing you know, all your money's gone.
It's funny you mentioned that, because some people that I know, including myself, they got a phone call that they won like $100,000, but you had to send them a check of $3,000 to do the paperwork. And the minute you have to send them money, because they could have taken it out of the $100,000 that you won, if you really think of it, the minute you have to send them money, you know it's a scam.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big one on Craigslist especially. They call it the secret shopper scam. They'll say, we're going to send you a check for $5,000, go shopping at this store, buy X amount of items, and then mail us back $1,000. You can keep the rest. By the time that check clears your account, you've spent all that money. Now the bank realizes that that's a fraudulent check, and now you're held responsible for the full $5,000.
But can I ask you something on that, Eric? Don't the banks, the minute I deposit a check, can they not check right away whether that check is legitimately good or bad? I mean, does it take 2-3 days to check?
It does. Unfortunately, most banks use an image processing software. So they take a picture of that check, they send it down to Atlanta, Georgia, in the Federal Reserve Bank, and then that image, they get the money from the other institution. So in that time frame, if you've spent that money, then you're out of luck.
Oh, that's
very unfortunate.
Right. Anything, some of the other things that you've noticed there that you could tell us?
Be careful of people online that say they are in love with you if they've never met you. The example I'm thinking of is a woman that met an individual who was from Zimbabwe, and he claimed he loved her, and she sent him all kinds of money, and he all of a sudden stopped talking to her. They never actually met in person. And this all took place over the internet. And now this woman had sent him so much money, and he just disappeared. He never really existed. It was just a hacker.
In other words, he was a gigolo.
I would apply that term to him, yes.
Oh man, some of the things that go on there.
It's a very scary place, the internet. You just have to be careful on what you're clicking on. You know, use caution. If you don't know who's sending you the email, be extra cautious.
I always say, you know, people do give out their social security number and debit cards. Now you mentioned something, once they get your email, but everybody can get the email eventually. Mm-hmm. It's the debit card number, the social security card number that they need to really do the hacking to scam those people, don't they?
Yeah, most often they're going to look for your financial information like your debit card or your credit card or your social. Massachusetts identifies that as your personally identifiable information, your PII. That, in addition to any combination of your first and last name, your first name and your address, they can really do some damage. One tool that they use is called social engineering. Well, they'll get a hold of your name and your address, and they'll call into the bank and say that they're you and try to get your account number. Then they get your account number, now they can do some damage.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Now, you've gone around and spoken to the residents in your neighborhood, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
What are some of the problems that they have mentioned to you that they would like to see solved?
Sure. Ward 5 is huge. It extends from the Point of Pines to Oak Island.
How many people approximately are in Ward 5, if I may ask?
I'm not sure of the exact population estimate, and I'm sure it's slightly outdated at this point.
Oh.
The last census was back in 2010.
Okay, so it's probably increased quite a bit by
Oh,
now.
yeah, I'd imagine so.
Okay.
The issues really vary for each neighborhood, and one example is Cary Ave, East Mountain Ave, and True Street. They're all located within the school zone, the high school, and they have no sidewalks for those kids to walk to school. If we get the snow that the forecasters are saying we're going to get this winter, we're going to have some issues on our hands where kids are going to be walking in the street to school, and that's not safe. We need to fix that right away.
That's pretty good. How many schools are in your district, if any at all, if I may ask?
Sure. So I have the high school in my area. I'm thinking through the whole district. It's very big.
What about that high school is in Ward 5?
The high school is in Ward 5, yes.
Quite a,
I believe that is the only one. The Paul Revere is in Ward 3, actually.
right. Oh, okay.
Some other issues, just to bring them up while I have you. Ford Street, Bellevue Avenue, North Shore Road, Beachland Avenue, Cary Avenue, True Street, they're all reporting rats. And when they report rats, they're reporting them about this size. It's so bad down on the Ford Street area. The residents are using bricks to hold their barrel tops down so that the rats can't get in there. And they're using plastic sealant to seal their windows on the bottom level so the rats don't break in.
Right, now, can't the people get a cat or a pet? No, I'm serious. Get a cat or a pet, because usually rats won't go near them.
I'm sure that might help, but when the rats are as big as people are saying they
How
are.
big did you say they
Oh
were?
yeah, they're about this big, some of them.
Oh, little dogs then, practically.
Bigger than some cats, yeah.
Wow. Oh, no. Because we used to have a problem down on the area where we lived before they built the Shore supermarket. And of course, when they leveled the ground and they cut everything up, the rats came over to the neighborhood on our side. And we got cats. A lot of the neighbors did get cats, and we're well, I won't say rat-free, but we have a minimal of rats. And mice too, by the way.
Okay.
So that's what we did for them.
I'm glad to hear that. I actually did speak with a woman last night who gave a lot of credit to her cat for getting rid of her rat problem.
Did she?
So it can be a solution.
Right. I don't know what they call it, but they have cases that I don't know if it's a rat poison that they put out in their places and the rats come and eat them, and they go somewhere else to pass away.
Sure. So they have these bait traps that the city does put out. A lot of
that's-
developments often put them out as well if they're expecting to dig up the area. And those are helpful to a point, but at this point, I'm not sure how to deal with that problem. We need some solutions and we need some innovative thinking. I know that at one point last year there was a city council that proposed owls because the owls would eat the mice. So that's an outside-the-box idea. I'm not sure how effective the owls would be, but I think it's worth exploring some new solutions like that.
No, because the owls would be good because, like cats, they get good sight at night. So that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Now, I have to go back to the city council with you.
Sure.
Tell the people exactly, if we can, what the functions are of the city councilors.
The city councilors, their job is to honestly voice your concerns at City Hall and to represent you appropriately. Some other concerns that I've heard, just to circle back to concerns, I do have a long list and I want to make sure I'm able to voice some of them.
That's what you're here for.
Sure. In Oak Island, I hear you when you tell me about the overgrown lots, and I hear you when you tell me about the syringes in the streets. We have that same issue in the Point of Pines and the Riverside area as well. People are disposing of heroin needles and other needles of that sort, and I think that kind of ties into the opioid epidemic that we face as a country. Sagamore Street area residents were reporting flooding and low power lines. I was out last night and I spoke with the family and they pointed that the power lines were within reaching distance of the street. I took a picture of me reaching out to the power line. It was this close to my hand.
Well, how low is a power line then? What's it, that much sagged on it?
It's that much slack, and that's not right. And those are the things that need to get fixed. And it's the city councilor's job to voice those concerns at City Hall on your behalf and to get those things done.
Isn't that the National Grid's problem, though?
National Grid is going to be the ones to come fix it, but the city councilors need to let them know to come fix it.
Well, they have to notify them?
Well, they can make a motion on your behalf to speed the process up. Residents can also submit requests to the city using the 311 service that the mayor recently launched.
But the residents themselves can call National Grid, and I can give you an example of that. Where I live, there was no light in the
On the pole?
poles. Thank you. There was no lights on the poles at all. And we called, the people got about 2 or 3, and we called the National Grid, and within 2 days they came down, fixed the So they do if they're notified.
If it takes 2 days, then I'm hoping to see a change over in that neighborhood that I walked last night by Tuesday, because I would love for those lines to be picked back up. They're way too close to the street.
Oh, what are some of the others that you have there?
Sure.
Let's have them.
I mentioned the gang graffiti on my street, and
Yep.
there's no excuse for that taking 5 months to get removed. Multiple residents reported it. We live in a neighborhood, not a gang war zone, and I want to keep it that way.
When you say gang graffiti, what do they usually write when those gangs write? I mean, is it curse words or things like that?
The gangs that were in my neighborhood in particular were writing numbers. So there's
Oh.
2 different gangs. One of them is MS-13, and the
Oh,
other...
I've heard about, they're all over the country.
We got to clean it up. I don't want them in our neighborhood. Absolutely not. So to that end, I think we need to increase the amount of public safety servants that we have, the amount of police officers. Our police officer force has diminished down to about 80 officers at this
Right.
point over the past several years. As our city continues to grow, those 80 officers are responsible for over 55,000 people in our city. If our city continues to grow, there's too many people for the residents to take, the officers to take care of.
Right.
It's just, we talked about mathematics before,
Yep.
and it's just bad math, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I told you the bad math. Next.
I'm just looking through. There's actually an incident that's dear to my heart. So I grew up on Mills Avenue down the Riverside section. And at the corner of Mills Avenue and John Avenue, there's a place called Gibson Landing. And when I was a kid, we used to run off the dock at Gibson Landing and jump into the water at high tide. For those of the residents down there today, they actually had an interesting situation where a shark, a good-sized shark, washed up on shore. I'm sure
They
that
showed
was in
it
the
on
news.
Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got some good pictures texted to
Yep.
me. But we used to jump into that water as kids, and that dock right now is buckled in half. And I've submitted several requests to the city to get that fixed, because quite honestly, if there's kids out there now running and jumping off that dock, they could get hurt. And I'd like to see that fixed.
That would be great. Anything else you'd like to have there that you would like to mention?
I just want to circle back to the point on commercial development. I really feel that our city needs a big business anchor to kind of offset that tax base for our residents. It costs almost $15,000 per student in the Revere public school systems. That's one of the highest in the state. To offset that cost so that our residents aren't footing the entire bill, I think if we bring in some commercial development, that could help out big time.
That would. Because, you know, a lot of the people, when they mention residential, that means more infrastructure, more sewage, more that live there, more kids, more cars, more traffic. But with the businesses, you just come and you go.
Right.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the businesses don't have children that they send to the school system. So you're not getting that same burden that you would get if that property was residential.
Right. Someone mentioned to me that was on the show that you have to be a resident of Revere to go to the Revere school. So you should be a resident of Revere that you go. How do you feel about that? if I may?
Oh, absolutely. It's the Revere residents that are paying the bill for our Revere public school system. You should have to live in the city to go to the city school. That
Right.
makes sense to me.
And then some of them talk about charter schools, public schools, private schools.
Private schools are one thing. If parents choose to send their students to a private school, they do pay for that out of their own pocket.
Oh, they pay for that, so the city or state doesn't cost no 1 cent for private
For
schools.
private school. Charter school is a different story. Charter
Okay.
schools are usually funded by the city government or local government. And in that situation, it makes that school a little bit more exclusive, so not all students can get into that school. And I don't think that's exactly fair, that some students would be given an advantage over others.
You mean the charter school picks and chooses who they want to come into the school?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Well, that's discrimination against the little ones.
Right, and that's not right. So I'd like to keep Revere Public Schools public.
So it should be just public schools, really.
I agree.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, what else would you like? We still got about 3.5 minutes. Take about 3 minutes, please.
Sure, so I have a pipe dream that I'm going to share with you. It's
Be
an
my guest.
absolute dream.
Share it with the people of Revere, too.
So the residents of the Point of Pines in the Oak Island area, now that school's back in session, they're facing gridlock coming towards the southbound on North Shore Road. So if they're heading towards Revere Street, they're locked up. My pipe dream would be to have a road connect 1A, so North Shore Road, all the way over to 107. A lot of residents come down and take that right at Revere Street and then go up and connect to 107 area to get to Squire Road and Northgate Plaza. If we could build a road directly through 1A to 107, that would expedite all that traffic, and that would also alleviate some of the traffic that we're seeing on Revere Street as well.
Right, when I go down Revere Street, I think what's the name of the school on Revere Street?
Paul Revere?
Yep, the Paul Revere School. I see cars backed up from the highway
Oh, yeah.
all the way up to the Immaculate, to the church, St. Anthony's, around the corner, all the way down past the 2 flower shops that are there.
Oh, yeah.
That's how far they're backed up in the morning. So how do you change that? I
Unfor-
mean, it's only it's not, you got one road coming one way and one going the other way. There's nothing you could really do to that.
Well, that's why I'm saying we need that additional road to connect 107 and North Shore Road, because that additional road would help alleviate some of that congestion. So I live on Tapley Avenue, as I mentioned. My mother lives down in the Riverside section on River Avenue. On a good hot summer day, it can take me about 30 minutes to get from point A to point B. I could walk there faster than I could drive there. It's amazing.
Maybe you can, but I can't.
But the point is still valid. You know, it's unfortunate that our residents have to face such traffic congestion. And as our city continues to grow and develop, we need to have a plan in place for the infrastructure. Right now, our traffic is in gridlock. We need a master plan for traffic. It needs to be studied, and we need to look at feasibility assessments to see what other options do we have.
That's pretty good. So Anthony, Eric, excuse me, Anthony, Eric.
He's the other young guy.
Right, excuse me, Eric. Thank you, first of all, for coming on, and it was a pleasure to have you on the show here. And I just wanted you to spend a few minutes and thank the City of Revere for the great job that they did for the people in Texas and Louisiana for the hurricane.
Sure. The people of Texas and Louisiana, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Also for the residents, there was a fire last night on the Beach Street. I'm not sure if you heard about that as well. Thoughts and prayers are with those families as well. I'm proud to be from Revere, a city that really cares about the community and cares about the nation as a whole. And I look forward to continuing the city's great works like that.
Right, Anthony, and I want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure.
It was an honor to have you here. Good luck to you, and God
Thank you.
bless you, Anthony.
Eric.
Eric, I'll get it right then. See, I am getting old now.
No.
I'm starting to get, but anyway, I want to say thanks to our military out there. May God bless them. God bless the people of Revere, but most of all, God bless the United States of America. And this time, Eric, God bless you. And the reason I keep saying Anthony, because he was as young as you are almost.
We actually grew up together a little bit. We used to play sports as kids together, so we knew each other.
Well, Anthony, God bless you, and God bless you, Eric.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.